The subject of today is the receptive and the active. And, of course, most people, when they talk about the receptive and the active, they say the active and the receptive. Because most people, they're first active, and then they're, for a short period, receptive to see if their activity has been affirmed. And if the activity has been reaffirmed, they're active again. And that's a little bit kind of, totally the opposite of how we could move through the active and the receptive. What's important to see is that the active and the receptive you can see also as movements. When two persons are active or there's two active, what's happening? There is not a movement. Nothing is happening. It's a collision. When two people are receptive, nobody is reaching nobody in a way. You understand? So, the active and the receptive, they're totally two sides of the same medal. That means, as much as one side is active, the other side has to be receptive. As much as one side is receptive, the other side is able to be active. It's the push and the pull in a way. So, and this is always a difficult discussion. Georgie has been talking about gravity, and of course, gravity we take as a pull. But are we absolutely sure that it's a pull? It could be a push. We are not sure. And whatever it is, when you talk about a force like gravity, the push and the pull is in a balance. This is important to understand, that this is basically, when we look at dualities, if we divide into dualities, if we've got one side, we need the other side. And because things needs to be in a balance, they will find harmony, they find a balance inside themselves. There will be as much push as there is a pull. If there is more push as pull, more pull will be created. You understand? It has to be in a balance somewhere. It has to come to a balance. For a short period it can be out of balance. That means that if we talk about good and bad, which is, I'm not going to talk about it, but it's important to understand this. That is, if there is good, there is bad. And if there is a certain amount of good, there will be an equal amount of bad. So, we all want to be good. That means that there is created, if we all want to be good, an equal amount of bad. It's funny, but it's really, you understand, a good can only exist because of bad. Bad can only exist because of good. So the push can only exist because there is a pull. And the pull can only exist because there is a push. The active can only exist because there is a receptive. The receptive can only exist because there is an active. So, if you just try to imagine, and we live in a society where the active as the good is overappreciated. You have to show them, otherwise you don't exist. At least they have to smell you. Yeah. If they smell you, they know that you were there. So this active, to show, to be active, to do. We live in an era, in a society, I think a worldwide society, not everywhere, but most of the world, in which the active is overappreciated, and so we try to solve problems by doing. Immediately. This is also how we talk to each other. You know, somebody has a problem, whatever problem, I'm fearful, so maybe you should go to a psychiatrist. Maybe you should take some medicine. Maybe you should change your car, your wife, your children, whatever. Solve it. Do something about it. You recognize what I'm talking about? Get rid of it. That's also an activity. Get rid of it, solve it. So the active is really very, very, very overappreciated. So if I say, if there's active, there must be as much receptive. So where's the receptive? Where would the receptive be if you see in humankind there is so much activity? But yeah.
Animals? Well, the receptivity is inside the activity.
And in which way is the receptivity inside the activity, Nicoline?
Well, if you start doing stuff, you gotta make sure you balance in a way, so you gotta take moments of rest. And that's when you get receptive.
Yeah.
It's like medicine versus medicine.
There's very much truth in it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's genius and Nicoline. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's absolutely true. It is so, but the rest, you know, do we really rest? Are we really receptive in a way that we are taking time and space for this? Because she's right, the active is in the receptive. And we have a humankind who is really focused on being active. So, if the active is in the receptive is in the active, what would be the result from it if we are focused on active?
Stress?
Illness.
So, if the receptive side is there as well, what do we receive?
The activity? Stress?
Achievements.
Stillness.
Stillness is the non-dual position. That's where we can contain both activity and receptivity. And that's the answer. It's a good answer. If we're in stillness, both the active and the receptive are there. We can contain both of them. If we are focused on the active, we resist the receptive.
Okay.
So if we resist this receptive, does that really work? If we resist the receptive, are things not coming in? If somebody's telling you something, you say, wah, 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 wah.
Still comes in.
It still comes in. And how does it come in? You know, the first thing is if we are too much focused on one side. Georgie talked about it as well. And again, you know, we go to the non-dual therapy to duality. So if we are focused generally too much on the active, we're there. We want to do things. We want to solve it. So then, you know, that means that the connection with stillness gets lost.
Yeah, that's also
There is no stillness. There is less stillness. And stillness is always there. But we are not so connected. We're kind of in the active. And so, what is our attitude towards the receptive then? This is really important to understand. What's our attitude towards the receptive if we're too much into the active?
Do you reject?
What?
You reject.
Yes. So our attitude towards the receptive is kind of, you know, it's less. It's better to solve as to be receptive. So there is a kind,
What is needed.
there is an aversion to being receptive. Not in everybody, but there is this general aversion to being receptive. You need to do something, you know. Listening is not enough. Feeling, experiencing is not enough. You need to do something. You know, and this is very, very basic. This is people coming to me and saying, okay, you know, I should do something with my life, otherwise my life is worthless. What should I do with my life?
Exactly.
You know, so you need to do something with your life. If you don't do something with your life, and what's doing something with your life? Because this is also kind of, you know, this is already kind of, you know, I don't want to break it down too much, but still it's
Breathing will be
interesting.
enough.
What?
Breathing will be enough. Thank you.
Do something with my life. So whose life is it?
Yeah.
Who is the me who owns the life?
Exactly.
Who is in charge of the life? Don't ask me this question, because then I kind of have to be receptive.
You want solution, only not go in the process.
Exactly. So a part of activity is running away from processing things. And we all know this, you know, when there's something which is really difficult to experience, to feel, you know, we start to run. We start to run, we start to be very active, to do a lot of things. You know, sometimes when you visit people, one of the persons is active all the time. You know, is surfing, is running around, is cleaning.
It's very tiring.
Story of Martha and Maria in the Bible.
Is working all the time, you know, surfing, cleaning, organizing. So, when you look to this person, active.
No meeting
It's
at
a
all.
good way to run.
What?
Yeah, it's a good way to run
Yes, what are we running from?
from the real contact.
But it's not the behavior, right? It's more the mindset. Doesn't matter if you're...
It's a mindset, but it's also behavior. You know, if the person who's running, if you would say to the person, sit down, I do everything. You know, you sit down, I serve you, you know, be social, be together with the people who are visiting, and I do everything. So what's happening? What?
Separation.
Insecurity? Being slow.
So what would happen if you put this person on a chair and you now sit down and you relax? You see, we start to laugh even more. Sit down and relax.
Relax.
You feel forced to get inside.
We take care of everything. You sit down and relax.
He would get very restless.
In the bud.
He will feel the restlessness which is inside.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and if you look underneath this restlessness, because restlessness is still, you know, is the nervous system running inside.
Yeah, still resistance.
Resistance, restlessness, go away. So what would be the feeling underneath?
Pain.
Worthless.
Fear.
Panic.
Panic, pain, fear, whatever is there. It doesn't matter so much, but it is trauma.
Yeah.
This is trauma. This is trauma. Could be a social trauma, could be an individual trauma. I don't know if there's any other traumas as social trauma, by the way, but still. So it's trauma. It seems not to be able for this person to really relax in company, in a family situation. Has to run. That's kind of sad.
It's real sad. Yeah.
But again, when we look, this is very, 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 very common. This is at the work floor, you see it everywhere. The moment people need to settle down, or the invitation to settle down, people are restless. There is something there happening in which we have to be active all the time. Active, 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 active. And I took an extreme example. But this extreme example, when you look into it, you see it basically in the whole Western society. We have to be active. When we don't do anything, what is happening? So we have a lot of beliefs about it. If we don't do anything, if we don't work, we are lazy. If we don't do anything, what did they say? It has something to do with the devil.
Nothing gets done. That's something I hear here and there.
Nothing gets done. If everybody would be like you and you just, you sit down and relax, everything, the whole world would fall apart. Wow. Let's do that. And it's not about, from a quiet space doing your work. That's something totally different. A lot of things can getting done in being relaxed, but it's the kind of action. So there is this unbearable feeling underneath when we are not active. So what is the drive to be active generally? Why are people so active? Why when we have, somebody in government, he has to build at least 2 bridges which will be never used. Or buildings which will be never used. He has to show that he is here, he has to kind of,
To be worthwhile? Do they acknowledge? Judgment.
It's a part of existence. How do I say it?
Yeah.
Because I hear that back from friends. If I say maybe it's better on your age to work a little bit shorter, then what is coming forward is the right to exist. That's connected with the job and not with themselves.
So partly what you say is very beautiful, partly because we project our value in what we do. We are what we manifest. And the more people can see what we manifest, the more important we are.
It's an empty vessel.
It's painful.
It's ready.
Yeah, when you look to it, it is a little bit painful, isn't it? So let's go to the receptive side. So what we decided already, if we are that active, where's the receptivity in this? What's happening there? Because, most of our focus, most of our attention, most of the movement is going outside. It's focused, conscious of what is manifested. So that means that less energy is going to the response of it, to what's coming in, what is received, what is experienced. Does that mean that we don't experience? Does that mean that we don't hear? Does that mean that we don't feel? Does that mean that that part of the nerve system is not working? So when we're running into activity, running, what's happening to the receptive side?
Underdeveloped.
Yeah.
So
It gets numbed, maybe? Yeah. Less less underdeveloped.
They,
I don't know the
they both are there. It's just that
They both are there.
you just don't notice it.
Exactly.
You have a partner who is very receptive.
That's a possibility. So the receptive side goes to the partner,
You project
who's never active. Don't think so. Yeah, but that could be that you could have a partner who's very receptive. It's not a stupid thing.
or animals. You do something somewhere, or you negate it very deep. I think it's the energy that goes into illness or stress or.
Yeah.
Can you get an overload of receptivity?
Absolute.
The build up in
Absolute, it builds up. You know, when we are not conscious of what is coming in the receptive side, it creates a lot of stress. You know, things are coming in, but they're not processed. So there is a lot of unprocessed stuff on the receptive side. If there is a lot of unprocessed stuff on the receptive side, first is we need to process it anyhow. So we need to sleep longer. Because partly what we do in dreams, we sleep. We process. During sleep we process. That's one thing. The other side thing is, if a lot of unprocessed stuff is coming in, we need to run harder.
Yeah.
We don't really feel connected really with the world around ourselves anymore. You understand? Because part of the connection is through receptivity. So we run even harder because of this. In reaching out, being active, being active, being active, being active, being active. And still things are coming in. It is coming in, if we like it or not. But it's difficult to process. We miss a lot. We don't feel connected anymore. We get disconnected. And above all, there is not stillness. So we come to stillness, to the non-dual position behind the active and the receptive.
And that's the function of the burnout.
Exactly. So we run, and we get a burnout. And what's happening during a burnout? Did anybody had a burnout? Yes.
Or you get an accident.
What? Or you get an accident, or you get sick, or you get your first heart attack, or whatever is happening. Something is happening.
Yeah.
So part of the motivation of being active, doing your best, being active, is because there's the feeling that we're not good enough. Whatever we do is not good enough. So we start to run harder because the feeling of failure and not being good enough and that your love is worth shit is so painful that we run to make it up. Give more. So when we run, give more, we go into a burnout. What's happening in a burnout?
Totally receptive.
Exactly. You just fall into the other side.
With all the difficulties in it.
Exactly. So you're in a way totally receptive. But what is the first feelings which are coming forward? What do you receive? What is there? How do you feel when you cannot run anymore and you are in a burnout? What do you feel? How do you feel?
Yeah, totally fatigued.
A lot of things.
Exhausted.
Failure.
What? Emotional. In what way emotional? Guilty. Worthless.
No existence anymore.
Yeah, worthless. That's a very strong one. Worthless. Failure.
And relief.
What?
And relief.
And it can be a relief, but not in the beginning.
No, it can be in the beginning.
Yes? Okay. Relief in the beginning. Yeah, relief because something is broken. A certain
Yeah.
pattern is broken.
That you don't have
You
to
can sleep
anymore.
all day.
Yeah.
Mm.
So to process.
Sorry?
To process. Yeah. And what are you processing during your sleep?
Shit.
No, it's really curious to look at it because it's very beautiful. Because, basically it's very much true. We go active, 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 active. We come to our burnout and then we get into receptive. And what are we processing?
All the build of stress.
Yeah, but what is stressful? Again, stress is such a general thing. What is stressful? It's quite personal. All the build-up stress. But what is the stress? What is giving us the stress?
Overload of activities.
Things that all came with
To be in
Yeah,
control.
that's
obligations that all
To be in control, to do everything yourself. But why would we need to do that? What's building the stress? What is the real stress behind it? What is coming forward when you have a burnout?
All the times that we didn't go in to feel
all the things that came in the receptive, but you didn't process.
Yeah, what
Being able to be yourself.
what don't we want to let in the receptive? Why are we
Not
running?
belonging.
What?
Helpless.
Not belonging, not being good enough.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The feeling of not belonging, not being good enough. All of this is basically processed partly in when we are in a burnout. All the resistance, the self-sacrifice, the hatred, which is the other side, the feeling totally trapped, having no choice, all of this. And so choice is so important, Georgie talked about yesterday, because it's the background of everything. We get trapped in a certain behavior. So choice is important. So we get trapped in the active. And it's really important to see how important choice, because we lose the choice. The moment that we go into a contraction, we have the feeling that there's no choice anymore. You see how important choice is. The moment we go into a narrowing, into a tunnel vision, there is no choice anymore. We're trapped.
But we choose to start being active because of the expectations that we have in kind of we need to build a status for ourselves, otherwise we don't exist, or we need to build a heritage. Otherwise, when we're dying, we're really dead. We're not there anymore. So in a way, it's a right of existence.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, do you really believe that? No, I'm asking you, do you really believe that?
I used to.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I never did. And it's not like this, but these are beliefs, these are reasons, which is a reason to stay active. But there are reasons afterwards, I think. Like you do something and then you give a reason why you do something. So, is there really are you active really kind of or are you active because you're taught to be active? That this is the way we should be as human beings.
Yeah, definitely.
And then after that come the reasons why, the beliefs, But we are just taught to be active. This is the way.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you should be. When you're an adult, you should be active. You should work hard. You should kind of take care of your family. There's all active, 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 active. It's in everything. If you have as a child a fear, you be active. You do something about it. If you have something, it's in the whole culture. It's very deep in the whole culture, and it's really important to look at it.
But why is this so extremely painful? I can't bear it. In a way.
Good. So you're the first one to fall. I want to go on with this till everybody falls. It's extremely painful. So why is it so extremely painful? You know, if we're here all being active, why is it so painful? What is painful about it?
It's just that you can't be yourself in a way.
You know, when we are all active, so who is receptive? So, you know, when everybody is active and nobody is really receptive, so where's the togetherness?
There's no connection.
Where is the connection? Where, you know, where is the connection when you're visiting somebody and he's cleaning and serving all the time and running to the kitchen and doing this and doing that? Where's the connection?
Being on the cell phone.
Being exactly being on the cell phone, playing games, having headphones on. No, it's extreme, and it's extremely painful, because in this being active we all are so incredibly lonely. And that drives us to be more active. Because if we are more active, what will happen? Then we proved ourselves, we built ourselves, and then we'll be seen, and when we'll be seen, we'll be less lonely. We will be okay.
We search it outside.
Exactly.
I hear it outside.
Huh?
I hear it outside.
But on the other way, loneliness is growing.
Yeah.
So receptive is growing.
Yeah.
So we respond on that
Exactly.
in this
So
way.
it will balance itself.
Yeah.
So, and then it balances itself partly by the burnout, because part of a burnout is loneliness. It's a real deep feeling of separation of the world around yourself. You cannot, the relief is that you cannot catch up anymore with the world around yourself, because it is not really you. There is a kind of relief in it, because you give, sacrifice, and at a certain moment it's and if it's really in your qualities and it's a flow of passion, you don't have a burnout. You have a burnout when you have to do things you don't really feel for. When it's in an environment you don't feel really happy, where you cannot find yourself. When you have the feeling that you cannot be yourself in your full flow of passion and qualities in expression. So loneliness.
Because up to that point, I was kind of thinking that you were really against activity, but I couldn't understand, because I dance with being a tune.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what you just said, I think.
Exactly.
Excellent. Yeah. So you're not against activity.
Absolutely
it's just that
not.
we overbalance that way.
It's like we are blindly active without being receptive.
Right.
We turned it around.
Yeah.
We are first active and then we are receptive. So that means that the activity has no direction.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the direction can only come from being receptive. You understand?
Oh, yes.
If I would give you an answer without listening to your question, it would be a crap answer, wouldn't it be? If I would say, no, blue. I'm sure it's blue. Don't tell me anything else, it's blue. We decided that it's blue, isn't it? But that's often how we're communicating. So I'm not against the active. But what is important is that what I try to show is that we active, we burn out in it, we suffer in it. It brings us a lot of loneliness, of separation. And again, in this, we even run away from the stillness which is contained in the activity. We are active in a way because you can be active, and at the same time there is this stillness inside yourself as well.
Then you work in a flow.
You work in a flow.
Yeah.
And there is stillness, and it's absolutely, totally beautiful connected with the environment, so there's receptivity and activity at the same time. But what is important to understand is in this cycle, you know, if you want to keep in touch with the stillness, it starts with the receptivity. It starts also with the movement inward. You first listen before you give an answer. Otherwise, you know, the answer is not connected at all. And this is where we get into trouble. Maybe why we run. Because if we turn it around and we first listen before we get active, we first go inside, we first be receptive. So part we are receptive to is ourselves. And what would we find out? If we first listen to ourselves.
What we need.
What?
What we need.
Partly what we need, but also our position in what we would be doing, or how we would respond. And maybe we would respond in a total different way as what we think is expected from us.
Yeah.
So part of it could be maybe that we would be confronted that we are misfits. Because we feel differently, our passion is moving in a different direction. Our truth is moving in a different direction. As what is maybe expected from us. So we first need to go to this burnout, to come to a position that you realize that you can only do it in one way. Your way. Otherwise, you know, everything will collapse. So we try to do it another way. But that's a painful process, because the decision that you only can do it in your way is a very painful process. You recognize this? It's first saying goodbye to a lot of things. And it's a relief. And in a way, and this is something also to look into, is that the tiredness, the burnout, the losing all energy is never going totally away. It stays in a way. It takes very long to totally heal from this. If there is a deep burnout, it takes a long time. You know, when we look deeper into the receptive, we have very little trust in the receptive. We not come to our own energy because still we are holding on to the active as the solution. And it takes a long time to really learn to trust the receptive. If we go deeply in, opening up into the receptive, and something is coming in, automatically at a certain moment an answer will come forward. This is the part which is effortless. So the active in a way is effortless if it's in balance with the receptive. It's not work, it happens by itself. So part of the art of inner growth is kind of, you know, to allow the receptive more and more and more and more. If the active comes totally in a balance with the receptive, then stillness is coming forward. But when we touch stillness inside ourselves, the active and the receptive will start to balance. And this is really important to understand, because that means, for me, when I kind of, you know, found stillness in my process, one of the big things what was happening, and which is still happening, and which is one of the, I think, beautiful things, is that I have the feeling that I'm able to process so much more in real time as I was before. Because, before that I had always the feeling I was in debt, in a way. And that is giving stress. That you're in debt. That you cannot really process what's coming in. It's too much.
In depth, you mean like being guilty, or like?
No, in depth, that there is like you're behind in processing what's happening in your life, and that the effect of it is that you feel more and more and more and more in a way isolated. You start to kind of move further away from living in the moment. You kind of move towards the future, and you get caught in the past. There is a lot of different, and this is dualities coming together with this. It's again a very, choice is very important, but the passive and the receptive is very important as well. The balance between the two and the stillness which is containing them. That kind of touches so much more dualities which are triggered if this is out of balance.
But it seems to be out of balance in society.
Absolutely, that's what I try to tell. And that's sad.
It's painful.
It's very painful. So the receptive is placed on women, and the active is placed on men. I'm not saying that women are receptive, or you can say they're the receptive side and the male is the active side. Bullshit. We're both receptive and active inside ourselves, but maybe the female side is more active and the male side is more receptive. I'm just turning it around what we think in society. Why would we place it with something? Because the male is pushing and the female is pulling?
In Africa, it's some way.
Sometimes it's around, and let's kind of get this out of it first, the male and the female. So we have the push and the pull. Both sides can push and both sides can pull, I think.
It's like a door.
What?
It's like a door on the airport. Push, pull, and the sounds in between.
Exactly. And what is interesting is the sounds in between.
But you can. Yesterday something happened to me because I could find stillness, silence, stillness,
Yeah.
in the contraction.
Yeah.
And when I could find that stillness,
Yeah.
the contraction turned around.
Exactly.
And something happened very beautiful, because my whole system was turned around.
Yeah.
So I could let something in what I was repressing.
Yeah, repressing. Yeah, not allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So, so that what you bring forward is stillness is a non-dual quality. So to allow a contraction and stillness moving through it, around it, this has again a very strong healing factor. It has a very strong healing factor in it. So all non-dual qualities have a strong healing factor. So part of the when we talk about resistance, so it brings us back to the push and the pull, to the active and the receptive. So there is a rebalancing the moment we move into stillness inside ourselves, between the active and the receptive. They both are contained. That means that the active is automatic as a response on the receptive. It always starts with the receptive. You understand? There is no other way as far as I can see it. But So in this, when stillness is moving into it, that means that something opened up. You became receptive to something which you were resisting, and that turned around everything. It was not in the first place an activity. Through the receptive, the activity came forward by itself.
Why?
The mind is often confused because the mind is so indoctrinated and active that the mind says all the time, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and it's not really the mind who did it. It's not even often not really active.
That was not what
No, but I kind of taking what you're saying in the next stage.
It was the movement thing.
Yeah.
Movement.
But
That they are in togetherness, then it's moving and it needs direction. And from which side comes the direction?
Exactly. The kind of movement is coming by itself. And if you let the movement come by itself, you know, the mind says, I did this.
Yeah,
That's what I was talking about. But basically, you know, when the movement is coming by itself, it is active and receptive together. Because, you know, there is a movement which is active, and at the same time we are in wonder, total receptive for the movement which is there. And this is only possible when there is stillness inside of us. And this kind of, you know, brings forward the bliss of movement, the bliss of touch, the bliss of life in a way. So it's absolutely okay to be active, but if the active is not grounded and it's just walking away, active because of you have to be active, then being active at a certain moment really becomes destructive, not only towards ourselves but also towards others and towards the world. There's a part of what's happening to our planet right now is due to this focus on being active. This is reflected partly in the whole balance, because we project receptive on the females and active on the males, the whole imbalance between male and female, in which there is no equality there. But at the same time we see more and more equality is growing slowly, maybe. And that is hopeful for the future, that we kind of start to kind of understand that all this activity is not leading somewhere. It's really not leading somewhere. We're kind of a little bit running around like chicken without heads to try to save, to try to save what happened yesterday and to secure it for tomorrow. And